What is going on, Clippers fans? Welcome to Season 2, Episode 75 of Clips and Dip. Now with 100% more Dip and 100% more Justin Russo. The fantastic Clippers reporter is joining us today. We got a lot of great stuff to talk about. I am Chuck Mockler, joined by Adam Osland and Will Updike, who is making some last-second Dip preparations, if you're watching this.
If this is chopped, my hands are up. I'm good. I'm done.
Okay. He's got the dip in time. There will be no desaturations or pay decreases coming up now that the dip is in time. We're going to talk about a lot of good stuff today. Justin, Mr. Russo, wrote a great draft article we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the 2030 pick. And we're going to talk about Kawhi being second team all NBA. But before we get into it, Adam, Will, how are you guys doing? Adam, how are you doing today?
First team all dip. I mean, I got a good one again today. I'm not messing around when it comes to this new feature we have. We will reveal the dips at the very end of the show, but you may notice if you're watching on the YouTube, we might be eating while the show is happening. However, so far, nobody has crunched on the air. For instance, Chuck is chewing down a chip right now. You don't hear it. If somebody happens to have their mic unmuted and they chow down on a chip or two, they're putting time out for 5 minutes.
Time out.
And that's even more meaningful today because we have Justin Russo on. You have 5 minutes without Justin Russo.
Is that a negative or yeah. I don't know.
No, that's punishment, man. Come on. And
Will,
thank you for being here.
How are you doing? We'll get to Russo in a sec. We got to get to the dips first. Will, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm doing really well. Did I do the dog unveiling last episode? I can't remember.
Briefly, Will got a dog.
Now.
Oh,
hell yeah!
What kind of dog is that, Will?
It is a teacup terrier, and he is fully grown, but the smallest thing ever.
There we go.
So, having a good time. Dog ownership. Look at me.
Dog ownership, dip ownership. Mr. Russo, for those of you who somehow don't know Justin Russo, if you follow this pod. Adam always says your name like a French Canadian.
I took a lot of heat from Noah Eagle over the years for that, for whatever reason, who just won an Emmy, by the way. Just putting that out there.
It makes me feel important when he says my name like that. I feel more sophisticated than I ever should.
Okay, that's good. We want a feeling of sophistication on this show paired with the dips. How are you doing? How's your Clippers off season? How did you feel seeing Kawhi being named second team all NBA?
I'm personally doing fine. I'm actually thankful for the off season. I needed time to unwind. It was a long year, but never really truly the off season. To some degree, there's still always stuff to do and follow and write and cover. But for the most part, it's been great. I've had time to kind of decompress a little bit. And obviously, there was the news today, as you said, Kawhi makes second team all NBA. That was maybe a little bit surprised that he made second team, but I think it was very well deserving that he made all NBA at least. But just hopefully next season it ends with him able to play in the postseason at this point. Like that's kind of what everyone's just waiting on at this point in time with them.
Yeah. Did you guys read the Tomer piece that came out today that was about the trade?
I read bits and pieces of it over the last few days as he sent me snippets, and then I read the full thing today. Yeah, I was in the war room. Okay.
So you told him to write all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
The shadow Tomer over here.
No, it was good. It was accurate. I think it's. I know it's like a taboo thing to mention, but they did lose the trade, and I think it's fair to say that. And I think that this is just me personally speaking. I think the path to kind of getting over it is accepting the fact that you're past it. And I think, once you accept that, then you can kind of continue along the quote unquote healing process and figuring out the rest of the way.
Wait, counterpoint. They've made the Western Conference Finals since the trade. The OKC Thunder have not. They lost in the second round. What's up?
They have, and that's obviously all very well and true. I think to look at the trade, you have to also look at it as they had a finite amount of time to get it done, and the goal for the trade wasn't just the conference finals; it was to get to a finals,
of course,
and if not, win a title. And they've never, outside of the bubble year, they've never finished a season with both guys on the floor. And so that's been a loss in and of itself. They've had to pivot several times along the way and send out more things to remedy situations and mistakes that they made over the years to fix it, and it just never has worked out. And I think it's okay to say that they lost it. Just because they lost it doesn't mean they haven't done good things. It's just, they're at a point now. Go ahead, Adam.
Would you also say just because they lost, it doesn't mean they shouldn't have done it, since every other team would have done that at the time?
I agree that because they lost it, it doesn't mean they shouldn't have done it.
Sometimes things don't work out. Yeah.
Correct. Like at the time, it was the right move to make for them to contend for a title. It just didn't work out. Hence, they lost it. But it doesn't mean that they were wrong to try. I think genuinely, when we talk about the NBA, we give too many teams crap for willingly going for it. Like people did it to Minnesota with the Gobert trade.
I did, yeah.
And like it takes time, but I don't think teams should be given crap for willingly going for it. I feel like it signifies that they're actually trying to be serious. Does it always work out? No, of course not. It very, very rarely ever works out. But I don't think you should poo-poo on teams for trying.
And I totally understand your point. I was somewhat tongue-in-cheek with the Western Conference Finals comment, because obviously OKC can make the argument, we're just starting our 5-year window of being open to win a championship. They have all these pieces. They can still get so much better internally and also through trade assets and things like that. And obviously,
which to be fair, is also a dangerous game, because you might think your runway is very long. And truth be told, in the NBA, in the era that we're in, your runway is really not as long as you think it is. Just ask Memphis to some degree, and even ask the prior iteration of the Oklahoma City Thunder. They made a finals, and then that was kind of it,
Yeah, no one should know more than them. So I expect actually Sam Presti to make a hard pivot this offseason, knowing that there's so much scrutiny regarding him as a GM and being a hoarder when it comes to picks and things like that. I actually think they're going to swing big this summer, so we'll see.
Bring Paul George back.
I think they should as well, to be honest. They personally, I know this isn't an Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, but
it's firmly not.
Personally, I think they should go just do whatever they can to get Lauri Markkanen, and just, if you have to pay a pretty penny, just do it. I think that's where they should be at.
The Clippers can't do anything like that.
No.
They are
firmly,
they lost Dan Craig, or Dan Craig left. Will, you and I were kind of talking about this when it happened. Is it that big of a deal? And I don't mean that disrespectfully towards Dan Craig. And B, does it kind of help the Clippers get out of this rut that I think we can all agree they're kind of in with this era right now?
I mean, I guess I'll address the last part of the question first. No, I don't think this has anything to do with the rut. I don't think Dan Craig is any part of the reason why Kawhi hasn't finished any of the last 4 straight postseasons. So no, I don't think it helps to do anything with the rut. I think that the assistant coach relationship probably depends on the situation, where you are, how much input you have. If he was more in charge of the defensive end of the ball, I mean, wasn't looking great there. So I guess not a big loss in that regard. Right. He was never that good on the mic in the pre and post conference. So
you want a little more zip, a little more pep.
I mean, could we get somebody? Yeah, could we get somebody if someone has to fill in? Could maybe just
you want Mike and Nori like stuff?
Throw a couple jokes. Ty doesn't love to be with the media, but he can get on the mic. He can chop it up. So I respect Dan Craig. I think it's interesting that he decided to make this move. I hope it's not emblematic of him sensing what the next season is going to look like for this team and internally, because it feels like he would probably feel the same way a lot of fans do about what it seems like is going to happen again next season.
I wonder, and you brought up the defensive, or the lack of defensive prowess the last couple of seasons by the Clippers. You look at it, he's the defensive coordinator, not just because DC is initials or anything like that. That's his job. They finished 16th.
They're like, you have to, dude.
Yeah, sorry. They finished 16th this past season defensively. They were actually much worse than that. If you just take out the first month of the season, we're talking like a bottom 5 defense.
Crazy fact, really quick. Sorry, Adam. It was the worst defensive rating in the history of the Clippers last year, which I thought was crazy. I know obviously offense has changed and stuff, but I was like, damn, I was like the worst ever with that many games from PG and Kawhi.
They were 17th though the year before. They were one slot worse.
Oh, I mean number wise, like not like ranking wise, like number wise. Basketball Reference told me.
Okay, what number? Okay, like field goal percentage given up or something, or
like the total defensive rating number, not like the
points per 100 possessions.
Yeah, the points per 100 possessions.
Yeah, this year it was 16th. Last year it was 17th.
Right, I'm telling you the number itself, not the ranking.
Oh, I see what you're saying. My bad.
Those words.
Yeah, I wonder if, because he was somebody who was on the rise when they brought him in, he was talked about at that point being the heir apparent to Eric Spoelstra in Miami, being on the fast track to being a head coach. And obviously there's no salary cap when it comes to paying coaches. And Steve Ballmer took care of him to make him the associate head coach. So I wonder if he's taken kind of a step back now and he has to reclaim a little bit of his value, you could say, going to Chicago. And maybe it's easier to turn around, even though they've had decent defenses kind of over the past couple of years, but maybe just being out of the spotlight a little bit, or maybe it's a lower bar because they're not expected to do as much as
cost of living. That assistant coach salary goes a lot further in Chicago.
Yeah, I'm just spitballing here because I'm not too clear on why timing wise that he would end up leaving. Justin, do you have any insight for us?
Tell us.
Well, three things really. Number one, Dan's a very bright guy. I spent some time talking to him privately for a piece. I never got to write the piece because I had car issues towards the end of the season, and that took up a large portion of my time. So that was fun. Yeah, so I never got to write the piece, but I talked to him. I guess I'll, expose a little bit of what I talked to him about. This was in Sacramento, the day that we learned that Kawhi was out. So Kawhi just played the previous game against Charlotte, and then that was the last time he played for the season. So I'd been meaning to talk to Dan for about a couple of weeks to a month, and so I was finally able to talk to him in Sacramento. I went up there and had a very good long conversation with him, all on the record, about defense. And this is obviously a very bright guy. This is a guy who understands defense to a degree that anyone listening to this will never fully understand. And the way that the game we talk about the way that the game has evolved. We've talked about defensive principles, everything under the sun defensively. Number two, I look at it as I don't think the team was satisfied at where they were defensively. And I don't think it was a Dan Craig issue. I genuinely think it was look, the guys are just not there. They're just not at the point that we need them to be. They've switched their coverages throughout the season. Initially, they had centers play up to the level of screens. Then they went to drop cover. I'm sorry if you hear craggly noises. I have a dog toy that just got brought to me.
Oh,
so that was fun.
I thought you were gonna be like, I'm playing with this dog toy. I was like,
no,
maybe we could cut this out.
Are you at Will's place? Or?
yeah. Will and I are hanging out. But where was I? They changed their defensive coverages throughout the season. Initially, they were trying to come up to the level of the screen a lot. Then when they became better defensively towards the end of the season, they were playing drop coverage more, which is what they were used to. So they tried things. They just didn't fully work. So it was more of a personnel issue, I'd say, than coaching issue. And third, this is just my read on it. I don't have any insight on this. I personally am looking at Dan leaving as a sign that Ty is probably closer to an extension than he was before. And the reason I say that is because Dan has been groomed to be the next guy wherever he goes. Like, he was being groomed that way, as Adam said, in Miami. He was the associate head coach, which was a promotion with the Clippers. He was paid very well for that. He coached games with the Clippers that he took over for Ty. Obviously he wasn't the most talkable guy in a public setting, but clearly was a straight shooter. And this might be the next pathway for him to get the job that he's looking for.
I think it's interesting that you bring up the personnel issue, because when I think about their issues defensively, I agree. It's not a scheme issue. It's a lack of effort and consistency on that end every night. Partially because there's just so many older guys on this team, and it's hard to do it night in and night out for 82 games during the regular season. And Kawhi ends up being second team All NBA today. And this just came out a couple hours ago. And Lakers fans were upset and saying, how did he make it over LeBron James? And I was looking up the defensive numbers. When Kawhi Leonard was out there on the court for the Clippers during the regular season in his 68 games, they had a defensive rating about 111.1, not about, exactly that. So, which is about top 5. When he was off the court, it jumped to 117.9, which is like a bottom 5 defense. Like, it was that glaring with and without Kawhi Leonard on the court, who was holding so much down on that end, especially when they went through that stint without Ivica Zubac and his backline defense. We really saw Kawhi had an amazing defensive season, I would say, maybe his best as a Clipper. And that was the difference to me. I think Zach Lowe and guys like that were looking at the defensive rating, because LeBron James, it's almost identical. It's within a fraction of a point, whether he's on the court defensively or not on the court. Kawhi was very meaningful to the Clippers defensively, but he's still an older guy, and he's not supposed to be playing that many minutes. And again, the end of the season, obviously, he misses the last month. The defensive rating gets worse and worse. So I agree with you. I think it says less about Dan Craig and more just about the construction of this team and just not having enough of those young guns that they can throw out there for 82 games that can really thrive on the defensive end.
I'm wondering, we're talking the Ty Lue thing. Ty Lue's contract is up after this season, correct?
Yeah. So when I was at Team USA last summer, we talked to Ty privately, or not really privately. I mean, it was on the record. I can't say privately. It was on the record. And, this was him going in the last 2 years of his deal. He was waiting for his final year to get picked up. And then Andrew Greif of the LA Times reported last August, shortly after, because Andrew was there for this too, reported that the Clippers picked up the 5th-year option and guaranteed his final year, which is this upcoming season. Because Ty signed a 5-year contract with the team. This is obviously, he's already done 4 years, and this is upcoming to year 5. So I know there was a Woj article that ESPN had that said 25-26 was the final year. I've worked to confirm that. I've gotten nowhere with that. I've asked a couple people. I'm still going off 24-25 just based on the reporting that was out there and just on talking to Ty initially. So I'm going into it thinking this coming season is the last year he's under a contract, and that's why they're trying to work on an extension. So that's how I have chosen to read it.
I texted Andrew Greif about this recently, back when the report came out regarding Darvin Ham being fired, and then immediately afterwards, the Clippers put out, it looked like that presser saying that they want to sign Coach Lue to a long-term deal. And he said the exact same thing, that this upcoming season is the final year of that contract.
Yeah, I think it was just a typo on Woj's part, which, I mean, the guy...
Come on, Woj.
What a casual.
I mean, the guy puts out a lot of stuff, so I wouldn't be shocked that there's a typo eventually somewhere.
From Woj bomb to Woj bombing, just pathetic.
And do you feel... chances seem high that Ty Lue's coming back. I don't know if you saw those quotes he said just throughout about, like, Ballmer teaching him like learning how to be in successful organizations, yada, yada. I feel like he's coming back, right?
I am operating under the assumption that he is coming back. I've operated under that assumption the last couple months. So unless I hear something different, that's what I'm kind of going with. Last year, I'll put it to you this way. Last summer, I was shakier on him returning than I am this summer.
Do you think there's anything to the Lakers waiting still to hire somebody? Because there was a report out there that they were trying to see what the Clippers move was with Coach Lue. Is there anything to that in your mind?
I don't think that's wrong. I think they'd be smart to do that. I don't think, with Mike Budenholzer already coming off the board, I don't think there's a rush to fill a coaching vacancy until you see how everything else unfolds. Like, for instance,
we got to get JJ Redick before Cleveland does.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they're waiting for, like, honestly, it could be a lot of things. Maybe they're waiting to see what the Clippers do. Maybe they're waiting for JJ to finish up his commitment with the NBA Finals or anything like that. Maybe they're waiting on Micah Nori and the Minnesota Timberwolves to be done, so they don't step on those toes. It could be a host of reasons. I don't know personally why they're waiting, but I do think on their side of things, they're smarter to wait than rush into things. That's how you end up in bad situations. In Phoenix's side, I understand why they did what they did. Whether or not I agree with Frank Vogel being the fall guy, I understand why they went out and got Mike Budenholzer as fast as they did.
That makes sense. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we are going to talk about Paul George coming back, a world in which he maybe doesn't come back, and what we would trade or not trade for the 2030 pick. And then, of course, there's going to be some dip talk. So all of that and coming up, all of that and more coming up. If you're listening, thanks for listening. If you're watching, there's going to be no break. The ads might be loud. Ads in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back into Clips and Dip. We are joined by Justin Russo, or Rousseau, depending on how you say it. Charles, did I cut you off? You look like you were about to say something.
No, you're good. I was about to eat a chip.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. That was the hold up motion was just for the chip. So anyways, we talked a little bit about the Clippers offseason so far, their rut, the loss of Dan Craig, obviously. Now we're going to talk a little bit about what they can do move-wise. And I guess the most reasonable place to start is probably the biggest domino that's going to fall for the Clippers offseason either way, which is, where does Paul George end up? I guess, Russo, I'll kick it to you. How are you seeing it right now? What is the probability that Paul George is not rostered as a Clipper on opening night of 24-25?
I'd put it at 60-40 returning. And the only reason I go that high is because I do think there is some thought that they don't want to lose him for nothing, so to speak, without any chance of replacing him. What I will say is, if you're going to, for anyone out there who's going to mock trade PG and go on trade machines and stuff, you have to remember the Clippers are over this first apron. Technically, they're over the second apron as well. But because they're over the first apron, if they sign and trade Paul George, they can't take back any salary. So that limits it. So basically, their only avenue to really trading Paul George, if they go that route, is he has to opt in, and then they trade him so that he can sign an extension with whoever acquires him. Obviously, if he opts in, most likely he's being traded, and he's being traded to wherever he wants to go. He would have the call, because then he's obviously able to negotiate an extension at that point.
That's like the Chris Paul deal going to Houston, right?
Yeah, it very much. Actually, what I would also liken it to is Porzingis last year with Washington, who opted into the last year of his deal, and then there was that whole thing about, obviously, the trade broke down between Boston and the Clippers and Washington, that 3-teamer, and then Porzingis had to negotiate an extension with Boston by the deadline of that night, and he did, and that's the only reason he got traded. So,
Justin, how would you evaluate the season Paul George had next to James Harden, the playoff first-round exit, him averaging just 19 points against Dallas, obviously struggling in the second half of Game 6. Just, have you shifted at all with how you perceive him as a player or as a Clipper?
I think he had a really good season. I think the playoffs soured a lot of what he did during the season. I think it's very fair to say he had a really good season. He was very efficient. He had a lot of great games. The playoffs did sour a lot of people, and very understandably so. I think it was the only word that I kept coming back to watching it was very disappointing, because it wasn't the lack of scoring. Just through a large portion of it just seemed like a lack of will to get shots up. And look, I understand no one wants guys to go out there and just chuck the ball up 30 times in a game without them being good shots. But it's not really,
Russ.
I mean, it's not really justifiable for your number one guy, to go out there and take like 11 shots in a game.
Right.
Like, it can't happen. Not in the playoffs where you're missing your best player. And yeah, it's soured a lot of fans. Like I said, justifiably, it's soured me watching it, because I say that I know it sounds terrible the way I say it,
it
but
makes sense.
No, I've seen what he can do up close and personal. I saw it against Phoenix. I saw it against Utah in 2021. I understand that's 3 years ago. A lot of stuff happens over the course of 3 years that changes who you are as a player. He got older. He's, going on 34 now, or is 34 now.
Mm-hmm. He's got a pod.
He's got a pod. He's not the player he used to be, and that's okay. I think he also has to admit that he's not the player he used to be. And, go ahead, Adam.
Do you see him as a number 3 now on a championship team instead of a number 2?
Yeah, and that's not what he was brought to the Clippers to be. And fair or not, like, it's very hard to justify paying a guy $45 million to start a new contract when he's the number 3 guy on your team. It's very hard to justify that. Like, not even just from a salary standpoint, but from a mental standpoint of that's not the guy. He's not even the second guy. And you're paying him $45 million. Like, it's a tough thing to come to terms with when roster building, because you do have to build a roster around them. And you have to hope that the guys around them can complement each other player. But then you have a guy that's making that much money who isn't the best player or second best player. And it affects a lot of things into how he's used. He doesn't want to be a ball handler. Totally fine. I understand.
He should not be.
I understand. I get it.
Hey, Halliburton couldn't dribble against Drew Holiday. Come on.
It happens, right? What I will say is, and this is my biggest gripe with what I've seen over the years, is when Doc was here and then left, PG complained that his first year he was a spot-up shooter. Then Ty comes here, and under the tutelage of Ty, but mostly also Chauncey Billups, runs point for them a lot and does very well. It was the reason they had such a great season, or one of the major reasons they had such a great season, was because he was able to grow as a ball handler, facilitator, isolation scorer. And then obviously the next season he's hurt, Chauncey's gone, and he just doesn't want to do it anymore. And could it be an age thing? It could, where like it's grinding. You're 30, at that point he was 32 years old, and you're being asked to do everything, and that grinds you down. I completely get it. But then, and I understand they're different players physically, but like you look at LeBron, and it's like this guy at that time was like 35, 36 years old, still doing it at a very high level, but you're not. And you just, not that you can't, you just don't want to. And if you don't want to do the things, and this is just me, obviously, personally speaking, if you don't want to do the things that make you the best player on the floor, you probably shouldn't be compensated as the best player on the floor, financially speaking.
Because that's how I'm thinking. Like, I think like there's all this stuff about like, Philadelphia might sign him, but if you're Philly, how do you pitch to everyone who's not Joel Embiid that you're now giving this guy, like Russo just said, the most? It's like someone coming to your job and being like, hey, I'm actually going to be called on way less than you, but I'm making maybe twice as much as you are. Like, that seems like such a difficult thing to maneuver as a coach.
I mean, the Philly thing is just like how, the free agent class isn't particularly strong. Like you're looking at your options on the board, and I like that's how you sell it to a team, is that you're paying 100 and what would it be, like 160 mil overall, 165 if he gets the 4-year full max. You're paying 165 to hopefully get 2 more years of a championship window with Joel Embiid, and that's like if everything breaks right.
Yeah, that's what it is. Embiid was the MVP last season. We only have so much time left with him. This makes us better. We have a better shot to win this season. We have to take advantage of this. And they haven't been through the Paul George experience of the up and downs and the inconsistency in his play.
The ups are great.
They haven't experienced it because obviously I'm guessing, Justin, when, his agent and the Clippers are negotiating or in those talks, if hypothetically they're like, well, Kawhi took this, so you take a little bit less than this. And he comes back with what? Saying, well, I can get a max from the Philadelphia 76ers. Do you think that's what the agent says? Or he obviously can play at this high of a level, and he can play like a number 1 some nights, certainly like a number 2 most nights. But those inconsistencies, I'm just trying to think of from their perspective how they're coming and selling the idea of Paul George coming back on a max contract, which if he can get it, he should get it. Get as much money as you can. But obviously it hasn't happened yet at this point. And everybody in all the reporting from Shams Charania recently is that's the stalemate right now. If the Clippers gave him a max, obviously he'd already have that signed, sealed, and delivered.
The best way I've ever had it explained to me in terms of free agency was by a reputable reporter who told me, your worth is dictated by what people will pay you. And doesn't mean that's the kind of player you are, just means that's just what, your worth is dictated by what other teams will pay you. And if another team can match it. Is Paul George a max player? if the Philadelphia 76ers think so, he's going to be a max player. And that'll then force the Clippers into deciding whether or not he is for them. If the Clippers give him the 4 years, $221 million that he's looking for, which is the full max that he can get from them, at the end of the day, it doesn't preclude them from, as harsh as it is to say, from doing to him what they did to Blake Griffin, which is trading him 6 months later. And, it could be a thing that they do. It's also very hard in their position, being a second apron team, to find takers under the apron who can then, you can work with. The whole PG thing comes down to whether or not the Clippers think it's a bluff that he will get a max contract from elsewhere, or if they think that home matters the most to him. I was told that there was a conversation that he had with a player on a rival team when they were in LA, towards the back part of the season, where he said to this player that, it's the money that matters the most to him. Very fair. And I support that.
Yeah,
I think in athletics, you should always go get the most money that you can get. You have a finite window of your career. You should cash in as much as possible. If that's how he feels,
and maybe dealing with the repercussions from your playing career for long after you're done.
Yeah. We've heard Kawhi talk about how he wants to be able to play with his kids, So if he feels he can get a max contract, then he should absolutely go for it. I think from the Clipper standpoint, I think, and this is just obviously this is not through any sourcing or anything like that or any intel. What I think they should look at it as is the sunk cost fallacy, which is you've already invested so much. How much more should you keep investing in the hopes that it turns around, or should you just kind of pull the parachute and then let the chips fall as they may? That's a harsh thing to think of for them specifically, because they do have the new stadium they're going into, and that's a hard sell. It's also a very hard sell for fans, I think, to look at the same team another year and just kind of go into the season going, well, what's going to happen now? Like, they're waiting. Fans are always waiting for something bad to happen, because something bad usually does happen, and that's just how it is. So I think if he commands a max, they probably shouldn't do it. They still might, but it doesn't mean they won't trade him if they give it to him.
Say, Justin, that he does get the max from Philadelphia and leaves. There's no opt-in, and then they trade him, which would be very kind on his part to accept something like that. He just leaves, and they do bring back James Harden. Depending on what that contract is, I know that factors in here too, but what type of flexibility would they have, if any? Or are you just losing Paul George and getting absolutely nothing, no salary cap maneuvering move, with being able to just, I don't know, bring in some younger pieces?
If he leaves for nothing, they're under the second apron by almost $2 million. That's just with current cap holds and stuff like that. Obviously, if Mason doesn't come back, they actually get under the first apron. So they would have flexibility if PG doesn't return. It allows them to kind of, I guess, reset the apron window and stuff like that. But if PG doesn't return, it handicaps their ability to compete. There's no two ways around it.
Sure.
Like, as much as he was disappointed in the postseason, you'd much rather have him than not have anything in his place. So financially speaking, they would have some wiggle room. It wouldn't be much, but they would get under the aprons. So there's that.
What
if you get under the aprons?
What's
the situation then with like a mid-level exception?
I'm going to be honest. I forget. This new CBA kind of whacked my mind a little bit. I forget which exception they would have. I think they would still be over the luxury tax. So they probably have the mini MLE to
taxpayer mid-level exception.
Yeah, taxpayer mid-level. So beyond that, I mean, if you factor in Russ leaving, and so here's the thing: if PG leaves, they don't bring back Mason, Russ opts out of his player option, and they waive and stretch PJ Tucker, they would get they would get under the luxury tax.
Okay.
So there's
which they are conscious of. People sometimes like to pretend that Ballmer will spend anything for this team, but he's conscious of a luxury tax. It's a lot of it's like $200 million difference.
I feel like the Eric Gordon
Yeah,
deal didn't come back to bite him. I feel like it really didn't come back to bite him like everybody said at the time. Oh, how could you let this guy go?
But it was a money decision.
It was
100% a money decision.
Where are we at on Harden's contract? I saw Lucas Hahn tweet that I liked where he'd like his contract to line up with Kawhi's just year-wise, which I was like, I like the idea of that. Just kind of give it a clear set window, tradable maybe. Because I feel like because might have more value than any of the big three particular Clippers, but like 3 for 100, 3 for 1. What is he gonna command?
One thing, sorry, before you give your answer, Justin, one thing I just wanted to leave on the Paul George thing, just speaking of James Harden, is what player, knowing what happened with the James Harden contract and Daryl Morey in Philadelphia, is willing to opt into a single last year of a contract and then hope that they're going to get the max the next year with that organization? That was just my last thing. Sorry, you can jump back.
That's a great point.
What you think he's at?
Hey James, should I do what you did?
Yeah, no, Will's exactly right though. Like you can't. It sounds bad to say, but you can't trust anyone at their words when it comes to money.
Yeah.
You know, like you're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars and people who want to save money. You know, you can't trust anybody in that situation. As for Harden, though, 3 years, 130 could work. That's his first year would start at 40 million. The third year would be 46.4, I think it would be.
The cap's going to be crazy too at that point. Like from what we saw today, it's nuts.
Yeah, so Harden's cap hold right now, I believe, is 49.35 million. So you'd basically shave 9 million off of the number going. Like if that's that's one way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, though, I mean, it's hard to look at a Harden deal and want to give him anything beyond 3 years. Not to say like not to say he wasn't good with the Clippers. It's just, you know, this is a guy who has a ton of miles on his legs. Yeah. It's not even just age. Like his work level has been absurd for the last 13, 14 years. This is a guy who has dealt with, you know, muscle issues, hamstring issues. And, you know, as great as he was for the Clippers this year, he was also very healthy. And you can't count on that. I say very healthy, relatively speaking. Obviously, he dealt with a shoulder issue. He had a heel issue. But you can't count on that going forward either.
Right. What do you think Russell Westbrook chooses to do? Do you think there's a market for him if he doesn't opt in?
I think there could be. I know that's crazy to some people. I think there could be.
People love Russ. He puts butts in the seats.
I think a team, I don't know if he would go back to Washington, but Washington could have some use for him. Chicago, potentially. Any team who has a point guard, not vacancy, but like a use for another point guard could always help. I don't know. For instance, Lawrence did say at his end of the season presser, this is now 2 weeks ago, that it's been a while. They're gonna sit down with Russ's representatives and kind of talk over what the role would be for next season and kind of talk over things. Which Russ has a player option, as we all know, so it's his call. My reading between the lines, and this could be wrong, but my reading between the lines of that was we're going to approach Russ with a role that he might not like and see what happens and just go from there. I'm of the belief that, you know, as good as Russ was at times, I also think they need to just see what they have in Bones. I think they don't know what they have.
Thank you.
He's going into a restricted free agency season. You know, he's going to be a restricted free agent after next season. So they need to know what they have in him and whether or not they should pay him and kind of just figure it out from there.
Adam was so grateful that you brought up Bones. I don't think he's ever said thank you like that on the pod before.
I know what they have. I know what they have. The skeleton key.
And then really quick before we kind of get to some draft stuff, there are some people who want to like really swing for the fences and like involve the 2030 pick in some kind of transaction for the Clippers. I just round robin. We'll start with you, Russo. Is that even on the radar? Do you think that's even on the radar of the Clippers? And is there anything you would trade the 2030 first round pick for?
I'll start with the second part first. I don't know what I would trade it for, to be honest with you. I'd have to like actually see it. You know what I mean? It's like one of those things because their ability to make moves is so limited because of the apron, where they can't take back any more money than they send. They can't aggregate contracts out. So it's like if you trade PJ Tucker, who's like 11 points, I have it here. Hold on, 11.54 million. You can't take back any more than that.
Right.
And what is
Chuck
PJ
has
Tucker?
that tattooed on him? Actually.
Yeah, I have his wave and stretch right here.
I mean,
he stretches like this.
I wrote about that in a column a week or so ago, which is that's one viable. I know it's not a sexy thing, but it saves them close to $8 million this season.
I'm all for it.
And in tax savings, that's a large amount of money. I don't know what a first round pick does for them in a deal. What I will say though, and this is going to the first part, is they should have it on the table. Now, it depends on what move that gets you. Is the only reason I would say it depends on what it would get you, as whether or not it should be on the table fully.
Sure.
What I will say also is, because of the way the new second apron is, and because of draft picks being locked in, it's technically the last pick they will have to trade for a very long time. Because if they're over the second apron for a number of years, their draft pick gets locked and they're not able to trade it. So they can trade 2030, they can pick swap 2031, and that's what they can do right now on draft night. I wouldn't rule anything out of the realm of possibility. I'm just kind of also at the point where it's like, how many draft picks can you keep trading to try to fix the problem that you created?
That's kind of where I'm at. Will, where are you on the 2030?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Russo, and it's just it depends on what it's going to look like. Like, is this is this a trade that's still happening with everyone running back as we expect? Because then there's not really a whole lot to do.
Yeah, it's like attaching it to PG after he signs a big deal. You're like, okay, well, that feels really bad too.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work. I mean, if you could do anything to get younger, like if you could get a Brandon Ingram or a DeJounte Murray and keep two of the three, I don't know how contractually that would work out. But if you could get younger, I guess. I mean, but the thing is if you any move that you make with that 2030, you need to be relatively assured that that is going to be a number one or number two player on your team after the Paul George and James Harden years are over. And Ingram is 26. So like, he's definitely like in that age range. And Murray is what, 24, something like that.
Sure. Yeah. Something like that.
So it's like a possibility. The thing that's difficult, I feel like, for LA to balance is, yes, it would be great to have that pick come to fruition and like have it be a high pick, but let's say I don't want to say it's the worst case scenario because it's not talent wise, but I think it is for the fans. Like worst case scenario, they run everything back. They remain status quo this year. I don't care. I know we've talked a lot about how Steve Ballmer wants, stars and butts in seats. How many butts are coming into seats to see the exact same thing? Like I'm not really seeing it. And if the same thing happens in the postseason, your next year is even lower. How can you justify continuing to raise these season ticket holder prices? So I'm saying that they don't have a lot of time to wait. Okay. And so you're going to wait, you're going to wait through this while your audience numbers are dwindling. And then you're going to hope that you're shitty enough for a season to get a high pick in 2030. And I got to be honest with you, man, the stadium is open for 7 years at that point, and there's not a draw. Like, I just don't see that working. I don't see that happening. And I'm not eager to give up 2030. It sounds terrifying. The team could be absolute garbage by then. But I think if you can make a move where you get younger, that might be your way forward, right? Like that might be your mid path forward. And I'm not saying it would extend a championship window. I think we're beyond that point, to be perfectly honest. But I do think that it can create enough excitement and competitive nature that it does make the team interesting.
I think the name you brought up there, I brought him up on the last show. We didn't really get into it, but Brandon Ingram is an interesting name because it sounds like we've talked about souring a lot. The New Orleans Pelicans have soured on him, but he will be an unrestricted free agent after this season. So you trade that pick for him, you better make sure you're able to bring him back. Hopefully he's back in Los Angeles. That's enough for him. There's potential with this team and he would want to stay. I do think somebody of that ilk, you brought up DeJounte Murray too, somebody that's a younger guy that may not be a number one on a championship team, but that could grow into a number two possibly. And I think Brandon Ingram could be that guy. He's looked like it at times. He's been special. And, all the pressure that was on him coming into the league and them comparing him to Kevin Durant. Well, I don't know. He's like 60% of the way. That's an all-star. He has made an all-star game before. So I think if you bring back everybody and you're saying we're trading the 2030 to go all in once again to double down or triple down or quadruple down, whatever it is at this point.
5 times down. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that appealing to people? You're trading it to try to extend this window and bring in somebody that makes you so good, that makes you so injury proof, or has, you have even more injury insurance.
Trading it for injury
know.
insurance, I would do in a heartbeat. Can we trade first round picks for injury insurance to ensure that no one gets hurt?
That'd be sweet.
Have they thought of that?
I'm sure the Mutual of Omaha is on the line right now.
Yeah.
Justin, you brought up earlier about the potential of re-signing Paul George or Harden or one of these guys and then trading them later on. Is Kawhi Leonard a possibility there, or is his contract and his injury history now completely taking him out of a situation where he could be the guy that gets moved for a team that believes, okay, we can get over the top if we bring in Kawhi Leonard and have a little bit of luck. Now, I'm not saying I want this by any means, but we're just throwing out hypotheticals.
What I will say is the timing of Kawhi Leonard signing his extension was not lost on a select handful of people when they found out about it. And he will be trade eligible in the beginning of July if they choose to go that route. So,
have you heard anything regarding the swelling in his right knee?
I have not. No.
Are we just going to find out if he's playing for Team USA or not?
We're going to find that out, or we're going to get a tweet saying he had a little scope-a-rooney and everything was okay, is what I feel like is going to happen.
My running joke is I'm going to get an email in a couple of weeks finding out that he's out for Team USA because he had a procedure 3 weeks ago and no one knew. So as Chuck said, no one knows. I don't know. I'm supposed to be going to Team USA this summer. So
oh, nice.
Russo in France, huh?
No, not in France. Not in France.
Oh, okay.
The training camp.
Oh, yeah. I was like, damn, that's sick as hell.
Actually, I will go to Paris. It's just in Vegas. So,
yeah. All right. Coming up, we're going to do another quick little break. That's very interesting about that Kawhi Leonard contract timeline and trade eligibility. What was it?
July 8th.
July 8th. Mark it on your calendars, I guess. We're going to be talking some draft talk, and then the most important part of the show that everyone across the world, as Will brought up earlier, seems to love, some dip talk. So there's some audio breaks coming up in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back into Clips and Dip, episode 75 of season 2. I'm Adam Moslin. We got Chuck Mockler, Will Updike, and the great Justin Russo, who will be going to Paris, not France, for the Olympics, is joining us here. Justin, you wrote a beautiful piece recently about this. Do you have any ideas of what the Clippers could be doing come the draft, which seems to be the most mediocre draft in the history of the NBA, according to all the experts and Jay Billis?
That's what everyone says. And then usually every draft has 3 guys that everyone's like, how did everyone pass on this guy? It's like, well, because everyone said the draft sucked. That's how. to figure out who they might be interested in, you have to look at their draft history, and their draft history tells me that there's no running formula that has been stuck to year after year. Last year, they took 2 guys who were 2 of the oldest players in the draft, but they were good athletes. They were just oldest players in the draft. The year before that, 2022, they take Musa, who was raw, great athlete, but raw. 2021, they take Keon Johnson, great athlete, but raw. But, then you start going back years and years, and it's like they're taking guys in the first round who were 3 and 4 year college players who don't really pan out. There's no rhyme or reason that you can kind of like you can't narrow down a specific draft formula, so to speak. Like
it's a moving target.
Yeah, and it happens. None of the picks are really high, so it gets tough to.
Good middle class at 46.
That's what they've said. But I don't know who they might look at. I have a list of guys going in that I think they probably should look at. I felt the same way last year and the year before because, I look at draft stuff. This year I wrote about 5 guys. I named 7, but I really wrote about 5. One of them was Adembana from UCLA, a very athletic center. He's a little bit undersized, but he's got a large wingspan. It's close to a 7'4" wingspan. A real around-the-rim guy, shot blocker. There's a kid out of Marquette, Oso Adigaharo, who is an athletic forward who basically plays center, kind of like he has a center's game. He does not shoot outside of the paint. He has a nice little floater game. He's a good defender. Not a long wingspan, but a very impactful defender from what I've seen. Alex Caravan of Connecticut, 2-time national champion. Really good shooter. Only takes threes and only takes layups. The kind of guy that Daryl Morey probably dreams about every
Modern
night.
Basketball, baby.
He's getting the max.
Jamal Shedd out of Houston, defensive guard. And then I wrote about Bronny James because I do think that he's intriguing. I know everyone writes about
chaos. I'm all here. That would be so crazy.
Ooh, I want to hear your opinion on him.
Look, I know people have very strong feelings about him, mostly because of who his dad is. I look at it as, here's a guy who, when he came out of high school, wasn't the tippy-top recruit, but he's a hard worker. Kid had cardiac arrest and still played basketball several months later. Tells you what kind of drive that kid has. Very good defender, good ball mover. Jump shot is in progress, but based on the film that's come out, it looks like he's made progress on the jumper. Look, I don't want to parse over it too much, but he's the son of LeBron James. I think LeBron James's kid would probably know how to play basketball to some degree. So it kind of helps to that, stance. But I think there are players in the draft that could help them. The number one rule that I have in drafts, though, and it sounds very stupid when you say it out loud, but it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, is, can this guy play basketball?
Seems important.
I think that's totally fair.
Seems important, but a lot of guys look like they can play basketball. Only a few can play basketball. And they have to go into the draft and get guys who can actually play basketball, whether that's this coming season or down the line.
Does this go back to athlete versus guy who just knows the game more instinctually?
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is I had a conversation about that with James Harden this year, and there was someone else that I had a conversation with. Oh, Tyrese Halliburton when the Pacers came in. We were talking about it. I said, I asked Tyrese, I said, do you think people get focused in draft models and look at the draft as, this guy's not a great athlete or this guy doesn't do this well. He's like, yeah, some guys are just basketball players. You can't really put into context how well they play basketball just because of how high they jump or how fast they run. Like he said, a lot of players are a lot better between the ears than they are on the court. He goes, but you need to find the guys that can do both at a respectable level. So that's kind of how I look at it.
If the Clippers do find someone at 46 who is at a respectable level of between the ears and on the court, what does their future even really look like with this team? Because that's been a difficult, we've talked about this window, right? We're an old team. I would love to find someone who could play functional minutes for this team next year from the bench, because call me negative or whatever, I don't see us drafting a starting caliber guy at 46, but there's still kind of this weird log jam of older guys to get pass. So maybe I'm just too nihilistic about it, but I'm like, I don't think it matters who they draft because I don't think this person, mostly not through fault of their own, will be given a shot in 2 seasons or even anything.
I think the thing for people to also remember is second round picks. I know some of them hit really high and play really well and have really long careers. The hit rate on mid to low second round picks is pretty low.
Right.
And like you have to genuinely get lucky. I know a lot of people point out, oh, well, Manu Ginobili was the 50-something pick. Like obviously he pan. Well, it's like, yeah, the reason you remember he was the 51st pick is because he did pan out. You don't remember everyone else who didn't. So, Terrence Mann panned out very well for his draft position. I think, that's a home run for the Clippers in a lot of sense. The other thing I will mention, actually, and I know this is going to be a killer for a lot of people who are hoping for an actual rotation player. The Clippers have 2 free two-way spots that'll be freed up this summer. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility whoever they pick at 46th is a little bit off the board because they're probably going to try to give him a 2-way deal. I just think I think people need to prepare themselves for that possibility.
Yeah. What about the possibility of Kai Jones turning into a superstar?
That has a possibility of happening too.
Thank you.
Anything's possible.
What's up, Chuck?
Adam's getting everything he wants this episode.
Anything's possible.
Yeah, hey, anything is possible. All right, we are getting into the most important part of the new season of the show, which is the dips. Justin Russo, you are our first guest on the dip era. You did not bring a dip.
I did not.
Which is
but
fine.
I have a suggestion.
Okay, should we do suggestion? Will, should we talk about this person who talks shit on us? Or
yeah, let's open with the comments and then get a nice suggestion.
We had a pretty funny take from Luca E on Twitter. Let me pull this up. He is a German basketball fan. He said the Clippers are so cooked that fan podcasts are now recording dip reviews.
Oh.
Well, first of all, Luca, thank you for following and watching the pod. The public demanded the dip reviews. We've been ostracized for not having actual dip on this show for months now. And we caved. We caved to the public.
This guy's Eclipse and Dip casual, clearly, because we've been talking about it for a long time. And look, he only got 1,200 views on that. Like, hope it worked out. Hope you got the attention you were looking for, buddy.
Can I just
hope Daniel Tice?
I just say that the whole country. The German word for cooked is cooked.
They're not a very creative people.
I'm just saying.
I don't know. Okay, Justin, what is your dip suggestion? And then I guess you could maybe judge our dips because you're the guest. The scale is, would you bring them to a barbecue? But first, your suggestion. The floor is yours.
Buffalo chicken dip.
Great suggestion.
I've made it before. It's incredible. And you can even do it in like your Instapot or your slow cooker. So it's great.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
You get a little shredded chicken, little buffalo wing sauce. You can add some cream cheese to it. It's incredible. It's like a whole meal.
A whole meal of dip.
Hey, listen, I'm a fat guy. I've had whole meals of dip, okay? And it suited me very well.
All right, Will, yours is the freshest dip, so I think you.
Yeah, well, God damn it, I did a buffalo chicken dip. So,
oh yeah,
mine is a no cook dip, but I used some lovely Lucerne whipped jalapeno cream cheese. Support California dairy farms. I used some blue cheese crumbles, a whole container, and a healthy dousing of Frank's Red Hot, along with some shredded chicken. And I've been eating it all show. It's great.
What have you been eating it with?
Oh, celery.
Celery. Got it. Okay, that sounds phenomenal.
Do you know that Amir Coffee has an entire thing of Frank's Red Hot in his locker?
That rules. How big is it?
It's the jumbo size.
That's awesome. All right, so we have.
And he's had it for years.
All right, Adam, your dip and chip combo.
And sticking with the keto theme, he has celery.
You do.
I have Hilo Life chips, which have like more protein to carb ratio, I guess. And they're actually really good. Nacho cheese, they're almond flour tortilla style chips. So this is like a Tom Brady thing, that he'd eat. But they're actually very flavorful. And
those chips prevent concussions.
Not roast. I bought this and I was in a bit of a pinch, so I didn't go too deep with it. I didn't have time for Trader Joe's and to battle through their parking lot and to brave the crowds. So I just went with Tostitos avocado salsa. It's not guacamole, it's avocado salsa.
So it's like wetter guacamole?
That's right. It's a thinner concoction. Although
you nailed it.
Oh,
this looks so dicey. Wow, 2 for 2.
Could you drink it?
You toss some ice in there, you got a slush. All right, that seems.
You sound like Carl Weathers in season 2 of Arrested Development. There, R.I.P.
Got us 2 going. All right, I went with last week. My dip was horrible. It was Doritos jalapeno ranch dip. I did Fritos hot bean dip with jalapeno. Phenomenal dip. And I paired it. I like that you guys are keto and I'm doing mine. And I paired it with some hot and spicy chicharrones, which
that part is keto.
Thank you. I think the Frito hot bean dip with jalapenos is keto too. Actually, I'll call them.
Absolutely not.
But
I'll call them.
Yeah, I'll call Frito. The texture of the baconettes with the bean dip is great. I'm all for it. Now, Justin, you are on the hot seat. Hey, we got a dog on the cam. What's up?
Oh,
you are on the hot seat. Which of these dips would you take to a barbecue?
I'm sorry, I got to go with Will's. That's a barbecue.
Hey, that's a great pick.
That's a barbecue
freaking ringer. He knew exactly what dip you wanted.
Because listen, if you add a little bit of barbecue sauce to that, it takes it to another level. And I feel like people would just flock over the entire bowl for the entire barbecue.
They would be.
I've never seen anyone really turn down a buffalo chicken dip.
You can't, because there's something in the back of your brain that just tells you it has everything you need. It's got dairy, it's got protein, it's got everything.
The whole
it's got
food
sauce.
pyramid.
Yeah, exactly. See?
Well, that ends another fantastic
food rectangle if you're Charles.
Yeah, it's 1 square of hot dogs, 1 square of bagel sandwiches. I'm
gonna miss the crypto.com arena hot dogs, by the way.
Don't even get me started. I had a chili dog before pretty much every single game. Plus,
have you gotten any info on what the food is going to be like into it in the media room? Will they have hot dogs?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I was going to make a joke.
When are you going to hold this organization accountable, Justin?
When are you going to grab him by the collar and say, "Where are the hot dogs"?
Listen, I had someone tell me the other day I'm too negative, which I haven't heard in a very long time.
I would not describe you as a negative person.
I like to genuinely think I kind of keep it pretty level for the most part, except when Chuck asks me before games how I think it's going to go, and I say they're going to lose.
Yeah, then Russo's before really every game.
I mean, isn't your ex picture just you like this? Oh God, why is it happening again?
So I will describe that picture for the reason that it was taken, because I, by that time, had been in Vegas for 5 straight days of nonstop summer league basketball, and I was ready to just die. It was the last day, and I was ready. I had to get ready to drive all the way home, and I was ready to just leave. I was done.
Was it after a Jason Preston turnover or something like that, or?
No, was that the game? I think that picture might have been from the game that Kenny Lofton Jr. Was going off, and I was just so tired.
Tired of Kenny. Makes sense. Well, Justin, thank you so much for joining us. It was fantastic. It's always great to talk Clippers and just basketball in general with you. Please plug all of your stuff.
If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's @FlyByNight, FLYBYKNITE. If you want to follow my work, it's justinrusso.substack.com, and you can find what I write there. I slowed a little bit down for the offseason, mostly because there's not a lot of stuff to write about. I'm trying to do at least one thing a week right now. I will warn people, you'll probably see me start writing some stuff about soccer when there's nothing happening. I'm sorry. It's just
Russo calls it soccer? That's crazy.
People might find this weird to know. I enjoy watching soccer more than I enjoy watching basketball. So
terrifying.
Yeah. It's pretty
No, it
bad,
makes
mostly because games end in 2 hours and I can just have a nice day.
And they start on time.
They start exactly when they say they're going to start.
Well, thank you again. It's been wonderful. Yeah, subscribe to his Substack. It'll make you a better Clippers fan. It'll make you a better basketball fan. We're going to be back next week. Will, where can these wonderful people find spots to perhaps review us or consume our content?
Yeah, so the best place to check us out is over on YouTube. That's youtube.com/@ClippersPodcast. If you're interested in only the audio version, you can do that wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening over on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, go ahead, leave us a rating and review. We'd really appreciate it.
We absolutely would. And Adam, you have the hardest part of the offseason. We need one positive thing to send these Clippers fans with for the rest of their week.
I need some help from Russo. I need him to put on the Terminator glasses. I need that before we get out of here. Come on, Justin.
All right,
Are they nearby?
No, I have to go get them.
Just say I'll be back. Say I'll be back.
I'll be back. Hold on.
I can also point out how Justin Russo brought up that Kawhi Leonard nugget about him being tradable in July. Not that any of us are rooting for that, but it's just an interesting, I guess, little thing to think about. Oh, what a badass!
For those of you who don't know, Justin has had to wear these in front of Ty Lue because he forgot his prescription glasses. We need one quick positive thing, Russo, in the Terminator glasses.
About the Clippers?
Yes.
Okay. I genuinely think that next year they will be better from an actual play standpoint, even if PG returns, just because I do think an offseason together matters. And I think that they got bogged down a lot on offense just because guys were still trying to learn how to play without Kawhi, because you got to remember they didn't really play without Kawhi that much with James. So I kind of think they will be better next year if everyone's back and everyone's healthy. I know if I say if everyone's healthy, that probably just means no one will be healthy, but I got to keep it positive. I think they'll be a lot healthier though. So there's that.
What's 26-5 if you extrapolate it over 82 games? Is that like
I don't know.
Is that 70-12? Is that what that is?
Let me see. 26-5.
No.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely not 70-12, but
It's 69. It's 69 wins.
Oh, what's up?
We'll take it.
Nice.
One last parting thought, though. I will say this. If fans feel like they were disappointed throughout the season, it's perfectly justifiable. There was a lot of disappointing parts, obviously, beyond just the 26-5. There was everything after that was pretty disappointing for the most part. But there was also a lot of cool stuff that happened. I think we generally only think about the negative sometimes when a season ends. But there was a lot of cool stuff that happened, and I kind of just don't think it should all be brushed aside as like a lost season because they didn't do anything else. I know it's hard, but you also have to look at the bright side sometimes, even if you do want to be negative at times.
It's tough to live in a world where it's all or nothing with your teams. You know, it's either championship or bust. And while I agree they had championship expectations and they came up short, there still have to be moments and highlights during the regular season. And that's why you should celebrate those big victories here and there, because you don't know if it's going to end up with a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow with this team, with any team. You go into a season and you say, you know what, I'm betting against all 30 NBA teams to win the championship. You're only going to be wrong one time. You're only going to be wrong once. It's hard, man. The Denver Nuggets just got bounced in round 2. I mean,
yeah. And their best moment of the season might have been a moment that I left at halftime, by the way. So let's just keep that in mind. I might have been the problem.
We'll end on that. Justin, I might have been the problem, Russo. Thank you for joining us. We'll see y'all next week. We hope you have a great rest of your night. And as always, let's go Clips.